So in 10.6, we're learning about segment relationships as opposed to angles. So what that means is we're looking for the lengths of chords and secants and tangents instead of the angles that they're creating. So the first one that you have is when you have two chords that cross. So you'll have the filled out notes that you can follow along to fill in the blanks. Okay, and this is whenever you have two chords. So we're going to see them break up into different parts. So that's why it says part times part equals part times part. So in this particular picture, ED times CE will be equal to AE times EB. So you'll multiply the parts together and set them equal. Okay, and you'll have those filled out notes that you're going to copy over. You'll actually be getting some points for doing that. So if you look at your first example, and you can follow this on the filled out one as well, you'll take 4 times 6, so the two numbers that are on the same chord, and set those equal to x times 3. That's going to give you that 24 equals 3x, and that's how x is equal to 8. Okay, so that's if you have two chords. So an example of that would be number 5. So you'll see that one worked out. On the back side, an example of that would be number 7 and number 9. The second type of relationship on today's lesson is whenever you have two secants. So you'll have those to fill out from the filled out notes. And so we're looking at these secants as having two pieces. The outside, which is the part that's outside of the circle, and then the whole thing, which is the entire secant. So when you look at this picture, the outside would be like EA, and the whole thing would be EB. The outside would be EC, and the whole thing would be ED. So as you're going through the filled out notes, you're going to see me write like out and whole. So I'm talking about this little portion that's hanging outside of the circle, multiplied against the entire segment, and then the same thing on the other side. And you'll set those equal to each other. So an example of this would be like number 2. 6 is the outside piece, and 15 is the entire thing. So you would do 6 times 15 is equal to 5 is the outside piece, and x plus 5 is the entire thing. So when you're going through the example on number 2, and you'll see this on your filled out ones, that the whole thing's there for you, you're looking for what little section is outside times the entire thing. So you're adding them together is equal to the other side that's outside the whole thing, that x plus 5. So you'll have a little bit of distributing to do. I would write down your work as you go just to keep track of what's happening. You see this in number, let's see, on the back side. Looks like that might be our only example there is that number 2. Okay, now number 3 is a little different because as you'll notice where the X is, there is no outside hole. There's just an outside piece. And so that's bringing us into that segments of secants and tangents theorem. So whenever you have just one of those, so in this example, you have that secant where it has an outside piece in the whole thing, and then the other segment is just outside, that's when you're going to square that outside piece. So you'll do outside squared equals outside times whole. So here's that example you'll be copying over. You'll see in number 3 there, okay, that we did x squared, so x times x, that's the piece that's just outside, equals the outside 10 against the whole thing, which is 40. So then we just solved it out. We don't really have to consider, or we don't need to consider the negative 20 as being a possibility for x because there's no such thing as a negative side length. You actually see that happen in some of these where you have to factor as you're copying those over that you would get 2 answers, a -4 and a 1, but you can't have -4 as x. Okay, that happens on the back as well in number 7, where you'll get 2 answers once you're factoring and you can't have a negative length. So that one we have to throw out as a possibility. That's called that extraneous solution. So you'll need to copy over all your notes. And as you're doing so, it may be helpful to come back through and listen to this message or this video, and I'll post it on Schoology so that you can access it that way. And then you'll move into your homework assignment, which is listed on your syllabus.